Okay, this is Jack Sheffield, Jack the exam guy. All right, don't ever let anybody tell you you don't know Jack, because now you do know Jack. And Jack is going to help you get past this contractor's exam. What we're going to do today is we're going to be looking at a set of plans. All right, this is very similar to what you're going to see when you take your exam. If you're a general contractor or a building contractor, if you're a residential contractor, they're going to be a little bit different. They won't be quite as commercial uh, oriented, but they will be very similar, and these exercises will be very valuable to you. Okay, so this is the first page of the plans. I would like to point out to you a couple of things. First of all, we always want to make sure that we're aware of these general notes. There's some of them are important, some of them not so much important. Okay. One here that all work inside of property lines, outside of property lines is not in the contract. Okay, so you may end up doing some type of a calculation. Make sure you're only talking about what's inside the property lines. Number 3 is very important. Dimensions drawn to curb and gutter are to the gutter pavement joint. So what are we talking about there? We're talking about something like this. Okay, so we have this circular area that has a 25-foot radius. Well, it's drawn to the outside, the gutter pavement joint. So if you were trying to figure out the area, maybe you were going to sod this area and you were going to find the area, you'd have to realize you're not going to put sod in the gutter, right? You're going to go up to the edge of the gutter. So what you have to do is you have to take this 25 feet and then you have to subtract the gutter width. We're going to tell you how to figure that out in just a minute. Let's see. Let's look at the rest of these notes before we go on. All right. Number 5, all walks are 4 foot each, 4 foot thick with 6 by 6, 1010 WWM. What is 6 times 6, 1010 WWM? Well, that's welded wire mesh. And the 6 times 6, 1010, all that is that's how far apart the mesh is in that welded wire mesh. That could become important if they wanted to ask you about tons of welded wire mesh, or how many square feet you need, and that kind of stuff. But what's probably more important is the fact that it's 4 inches thick, because you're more likely to get a question about the volume of concrete that you're going to need. So keep that in mind. All walks are 4 inches thick. Okay, number 6 is important. First floor elevation is 95 and shall be referred to in other drawings as elevation 00. So here you go. First floor elevation, that's 95 feet above sea level. Okay. Your parking area is slope for drainage at 0.4%. So your drainage is 0.4%. So from one, as you move through the parking lot is not completely level. It is designed to drain 4%, and it discharges, it tells us here, at the south property line. So right over here is where it's gonna drain. So you might get a question about the elevation of the parking lot. So we'll get to that. This is just a brief introduction. This is just a brief introduction, and all of these things we're going to hit in more detail, and if we feel that they're important, and a lot of them are. Okay, so this is page 2. We have a foundation plan. Before we look at the actual foundation, let's look at this gutter, because we mentioned that in the first slide. This is your gutter detail, and what you'll see is it is 1 foot 6 inches, so it's 1.5 feet. All right, it's 1.5 feet wide. So remember that 25-foot radius? Well, when we're actually figuring out the amount of sod we're putting in, the radius becomes 23.5 feet. And we'll do some in other slides and other episodes. Okay, we are going to do more calculations with regard to that. So keep tuned. And then you also have a detail of the elevator pit. So here's our elevator pit, and it gives you a dimension of it. We're going to talk way more in detail about the elevator pit because they just love to ask questions about the elevator pit. So we'll get back to that in the near future. And then you have your actual foundation here. Okay, you've got all the different columns, and each of these columns is going to have a footing, and then they're going to have rebar in the footing. Concrete is going to be what the footing is generally. There's going to be some columns that come up from the footing, and we are going to explore that when we get to those particular questions. Okay, these little triangles indicate what type of footing we're talking about, because some of these footings are the same. There's actually 5 different types of footings, and that's why in these triangles you'll see 1 through 5. And like I said, we'll be doing some calculations with regard to the columns. Just doing a brief overview right now. Okay, so we have the first floor plan, which is great. Okay, and we have some more notes here. It says that all concrete blocks are 8-inch CMU. You probably know by now, concrete CMU means concrete masonry unit. It's a fancy name for a concrete block. Okay, number 9, all laboratory masonry panel walls are 1 foot above the acoustical ceiling. That's great. We'll need to use that at some point. Ceiling height in restrooms on all floors is 9 feet 0 inches. That could come in handy later. I like number 17, which is columns. Column boxing is 1 foot typical. So you got a column here. You've got a lot of different columns. And what you have to realize is they box around the column because that's a beam inside that column. So you got to finish it out somehow. Well, that's 1 foot. It's 1 foot by 1 foot. Column boxing is 1 foot typical, it says. Okay, and reinforced steels to have 3 inches of cover. Well, that could have to do with that welded wire mesh that we talked about a few minutes ago. Okay, when you put a welded wire mesh into that slab, there's supposed to be 3 inches of cover, okay, of concrete cover over that steel. You don't want that steel to go all the way to the edge of your concrete because then it exposes it to weather. Okay, and that's also for the steel that's in your concrete footers as well. You can see here, something that you can see here is there are 2 stairways. All right, so you could get a question about stairways. How many steps are there, and so on and so forth, and you have to realize there are 2 stairways. Okay, don't forget that. As we move forward to the second floor, now this is the tower. What does that mean? Well, that's that main section of building, is the second floor and the lower roof plans. I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute. These on each side, that's your lower roof. Okay, your lower roof is 1 floor up, and so this is the roof of these lower sections is the same as the second floor of the second floor, the floor of the second floor. We also have a detail over here. This is a metal stud and drywall partitions. Now you'll see this 1/4, okay, right here, or it could be an I/4. All right, so we look at that and we come over here to our plan and we see I/4. So this is a detail of this wall right here. All right, so we've got 1 here and 1 here. Now this one is a little bit different. This is 1/I/8. All right, so that is an exterior wall, and we'll see those in a minute as well. Okay, all right, just doing a little overview here. Okay, so this is the 3rd and 4th floor plan. So make sure. So we have a question out there that asks you about these partition walls. So you have to realize you have to count the partition walls on this plan twice because you have these on the 3rd and the 4th floor. So this is the 3rd and the 4th floor plan. Make sure that you're aware of that. Here is the roof plan. Now this is for the tower. This is for the main section. All right, so you've got all these roof drains. That's going to become important. And then you've got the two elevator shafts. Okay, they have roof drains in them as well. And then we've got the concrete steps. All right, a detail of the concrete steps. Now we can go back to the first slide if you want to go back to the first page and take a look at where those entrance steps are. There's a good chance that we might have to figure out what the volume of those entrance steps are. So we'll talk about that in the future. This is a detail of the of your flooring, your composite floors, your concrete floors. Okay, so each one of these floors, first, second, third, fourth, and so forth, is going to have this slab. This is the detail of the slab. So you may have to figure out what the volume of concrete is for a floor. While we're talking about that, I also want to point out to you these numbers here. Okay, so we have a 5 and a 6, a 7 and an 8, and so forth. So they use these numbers to indicate, and show you what these different areas are. Okay, so what you've got over here is you have A, B, C, D, E. These are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have alphabetical going vertical. We have numerical going horizontal. So if they wanted to depict this particular section right here, they would depict that as 6, 7, D, E. Okay, and that would be that particular square. And then maybe you would have to do the volume of concrete for that floor area. All right, and we'll do one of those. You'll see one of those in a future lesson. Okay, so now here is the elevations. Okay, so you have a southeast elevation, you have a southwest elevation, and you have all of these elevations of the first floor, second floor, and so forth. Okay, now be careful about this, because remember, there were notes that said the actual elevation of your finished floor was 95. So then you have to think about what your actual elevation is of the roof, or all the other corresponding floors. You'll see that again in the future, pretty sure. Okay, we have some details here. These are our exterior wall details that we kind of looked at a minute ago. This is the I/8. This is a wall section here, so you might want to take a look at that. I haven't really seen these used very much, but these are our exterior wall sections. That's this panel and the next panel. They're fairly similar, but I believe one of them is the typical exterior wall. Excuse me. The other one is the exterior wall where the elevator is located. And then this is a very important page here. This is the stairs. This is a detail of the stairs, and we'll be talking about the stairs and how we figure out different amounts of concrete, or how many stairs there are, and that type of thing. We'll be looking at that at some point. And this other section on the other side is your column and footing schedule. So if you remember from the foundation plan, there were all of those little triangle marks. Well, each one of those, there were 5 different numbers in these triangles. Well, now we know what they're talking about. Okay, this is what a number 1 looks like. This is what a number 2 looks like, 3 and 4, and so forth. And it gives us the reinforcing. It gives us the depth of the footer. It gives us the size. This would be the area of the footer. So that's length times width times depth. Size is length times width. The depth is obviously the depth. Then you have this base plate here, that goes on top. You may have to figure out, what the base plate is. How many square feet of steel, or cubic. Actually, it would be cubic feet or cubic inches of steel. Cubic feet of steel. We'll talk about how we look at figure that out. And then you actually have your steel columns here. You have your elevation numbers, which tells you how tall the individual columns are, and you've got some nomenclature there, which tells you what type of web it is. And we'll talk more about this. Once again, this is just a little introduction to get you familiar with the plans. And we have the next one is our second floor and lower roofs uh, framing plan. So this is the frame of the floor, all the steel framing of the floor of the second of the tower on floor number 2. And then we have these lower roofs. This is the roof framing for those lower roofs that we talked about earlier. Okay. And then we have a detail for a planter. Okay. I talked with somebody the other day that said, man, I had to figure out the volume of concrete in a planter. And we're going to talk about that in a future lesson. Okay. These are some really fun math questions to do. Okay, so on the next page, we have a detail of the stairs. So when we have to figure out how much concrete we're going to use, we are going to be able to access this detail right here. And then we have the third and the fourth floor's framing plan. Okay, so this is the fourth floor for the third and the floor for the fourth floor, all the different steel that goes in it. And once again, note that you've got your alphabetical indicators on the left hand side going vertically, and you have your numerical indicators going horizontally, which are going to help us because they could just ask you about the steel in a particular section, so you kind of got to understand what that means. Okay, we have a roof framing plan. All right, same type of thing. All right, all these different different nomenclature for the different types of steel. They call them webs. All right, and we might have to count those up at some point. And I know these plans, they don't look like they're the greatest plans in the world. And the first time I was in your shoes trying to study for this exam, I felt the same way. I thought, this is one cheesy set of plans. And then I sat down for the exam and I realized, hey, that was a cheesy set of plans as well. It looked just like this one. Okay, so, all right. So as we go to the next page, we see that we have some symbols and abbreviations. So this will help you, these symbols will help you maybe if they're asking about concrete, then you know that anywhere where there's, where it looks like this particular, symbol here, that's going to be concrete. They could ask you for the volume of concrete on the walkways. Well, you're going to have to pick out the walkways that look like this and understand that the ones that look like the gravel are different. Okay. And then you have some abbreviations. This could help you kind of understand what's going on sometimes. You're seeing an abbreviation in a question, and or you're seeing an abbreviation on a set of plans, and you like that WWM that we talked about, welded wire mesh. Okay, that's just reinforcement for a concrete slab. All right, and of course you can reinforce with rebar as well. Welded wire mesh is much less thick and sturdy and rigid as rebar. Okay, and then is there CMU? Yeah, here it is, CMU, concrete masonry unit. Okay, another fancy word for a concrete block. So you might want to access those if you're not real familiar with construction abbreviations, or even if you are and you see something that you're unfamiliar with. And then finally, the last page of your plans is going to have something that looks like this. Some people say this looks sort of like the Starship Enterprise. Well, it's not, but it does look like it. And this is what they call the critical path method. This is a schedule. And we won't go into it in too much detail right now, but that is the schedule. And as we go through other lessons, by the way, real quick, here is the activity, and it's got a letter next to it. And then that activity corresponds to what's here on the schedule. And the number is the number of days. So we look here and we see this double A 11. Well, what is that? Well, double A is roofing, so it says the roofing is going to take us 11 days. All right. At the same time, you've got double F, which is going to take 19 days. We look at double F and we say windows and door installation. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means, you know, they're going to be on the job at the same time, but it's going to take 19 days to do the windows and doors, while the roof is going to take 11 days. So the roof crew has what they call 8 days of float time. All right. So, if you were just comparing those two, now you've got some other ones to compare down here, and that makes it that much more complicated. But just to give you a brief overview of what you're looking at, that was the point of that. Okay, very good. All right, that's going to take us all the way through the set of plans. This is just an introduction. As you work through the next lessons, we are going to go in much more detail about how to do the elevators, how to do different things on the site, how to do work on these plans. We're gonna possibly do a planter. So there's all types of math questions that are associated with this set of plans. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. This is Jack the Exam Guy, and now you know Jack.